Good morning.
Good morning.
It is wonderful to see so many familiar faces. You know, one thing about folks that are doers, they always tend to show up. So as your Super District 7 Commissioner, I am proud to work with each and every one of you. This morning, before we begin, and thanks to those who are also joining us remotely this morning, I hope you have a wonderful connection. We will be sending out, we do record, so we will send out everything that happens here today so that we can expand our footprint, because there are some who could not be present, but yet have an interest in what we're discussing. I'm not sure how many of you live here in DeKalb County. Yes, that's great. Let's see by a show of hands what we have here. Okay, vast majority. Of course, I became concerned with housing upon taking office in 2019. It was during that time that we passed our annual comprehensive plan. And we agreed that during the course of the year, we would be responsible for developing 300 housing units. However, the most recent housing study indicated we should be developing a minimum of 3,000 units per year. So oftentimes people look to government to do what they can't do or provide for themselves. But technically, the DeKalb County government is not in the business of real estate, nor are we in particular responsible for housing. But of course, because of the global pandemic that we've experienced, supply chain issues, a lack of building, in many US cities, we are seeing a housing crisis, a severe lack of inventory, whether you seek to purchase or you seek to rent. What you see here on the monitor, this is some data that I often use to begin conversations. Of course, here in DeKalb County, according to the most recent data, we have 772,000 DeKalb County residents. And I learned through speaking with Mr. Pete Walker, who you'll hear from later, who is the director of the DeKalb County Housing Authority. Oftentimes people will call and say, we need housing assistance. And of course, I always send them along to Mr. Walker. But we track everything in District 7. So I began to receive repeat calls. And it was at that time that I reached out to his office and I understood that we have 45,000 people on a waiting list waiting to receive affordable housing. Now, depending upon where you are, affordable is defined differently. What's affordable in one community may not be considered affordable or the same number in a different community. Also, it was very interesting that in 2021, when the data came in, we found that 51% of homes south of Memorial Drive, there are R100 properties, residential, when they were sold, they were not sold to single family residents. 51% were sold to private equity firms, LLCs, Wall Street, and private investors. So what we see is the dynamics of our community shifting. At the same time, we are in the middle of a housing crisis. And I'm seeing more renters develop and landlords than I am single family property home owners. So understanding those dynamics, I embarked upon enlisting the assistance of the community in developing affordable housing in our community. And I'm very proud. I do want to acknowledge Pastor Harris, and she's with Greater Piney Grove, and the Reverend Dr. Flippin. And they recently developed 76 units, 70 units, and it's called The Grove. Absolutely stunning community. And understanding that our churches often have a wealth of resources that individuals do not. I decided strategically to reach out to our clergy, to our pastors, and have the conversation and facilitate what is necessary to help you all develop affordable housing so that we can put a true dent in what we see here in DeKalb. Now, one of the things also that exacerbates this problem, and Allison, you can go ahead and move to the next slide, another thing that exacerbates what you see here is in order to receive tax credits, it only requires that 10% of your units are set aside. So if you're a developer, you can receive tax credits for the housing, but if you're building 100 units, we only get 10. I need projects that are devoted 100% to senior and affordable housing in DeKalb County, Georgia. And I'm looking to you all to empower you, to help. So of course, this is our second in a series of technical seminars that I will be having to walk you completely through the process. This morning, we are very blessed to have a very distinguished panel, and the folk you have here in front of you single-handedly can see you through the entire process. Of course, you know me, so we can go on past me. I'm your commissioner. I don't care where you live in DeKalb. If you're outside DeKalb, you can call me. But our first panel member this morning is Mr. Andrew Baker. He is the Director of Planning and Sustainability for DeKalb County. He serves in his capacity, he manages long-range planning, current planning, building services, neighborhood empowerment, and code compliance. Mr. Baker joined DeKalb County in 2006 as the Associate Director of Planning. Prior to joining DeKalb County, he worked for the City of Columbia in South Carolina as a Community Development Specialist, and later as a zoning analyst. In addition, Mr. Baker worked for the Hillsborough County, City County Planning Commission in Tampa, Florida, where he oversaw comprehensive plans, subdivision coordination, and zoning reviews. His extensive background in urban planning also includes more than 200 years of experience in the private, over 20 years, I'm sorry, of experience. I thought that was a little long. In private sector. Mr. Baker started A.A. Baker and Associates in 1994 and operated the business for over 12 years with a specialty in zoning, public facilitation, and redevelopment planning. He subcontracted work to economists, landscape architects, and facilitators. And he also worked throughout Florida on community redevelopment plans, zoning code updates, and master plans. He serves as a member of the program management team of HOPE 6 projects for Detroit, Michigan, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Punta Gorda, Florida, and Tampa, Florida. Of course, he has several degrees. We won't list all those, but thank you so much, Mr. Baker, for taking the time to be present. And for those of you who understand the process at all, everything starts with Mr. Baker. As it relates to your land disturbance permits, if we need to do any form of upzoning so that you are able to develop. So thank you for being with us this morning. Next, we have Mr. Dorian Davar. Dorian is the president of the DeKalb Development Authority. He is acclimated. He is accomplished with a long list of accomplishments since assuming this role. Since his first day, he's been hard at work, and he has since recognized DeKalb County and paved the way for historic growth across 24 months within DeKalb County, with a $1.8 billion in capital investments and more than 8,800 new and retained jobs across 2019 to 2020. Since Davar joined DeKalb, revenue has increased by 350% in 2 years. He is also a trendsetter who has successfully executed and implemented a $1.5 million advanced DeKalb capital campaign, the first of its kind. He has done everything from managing the Atlanta Beltline tag, and tags are of course tax allocation districts, and IA partnership in negotiating and closing over $220 million in public bond finance. That money serves as the lead source of financing for construction of the famous Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Mr. Davar also manages each other city's 10 tax allocation districts that are located here in DeKalb, work that has resulted in Atlantic Station, the Center for Civil and Human Rights Museums, Atlanta Beltline, Camp Creek Marketplace, and several other transformative projects throughout Atlanta. So I'm very excited, you know, well, Mr. Davar and I pretty much came along at the same time, but he has such an impressive track record. And to say that an individual has increased revenue over 350% in 2 years tells you that there are some good people and good things going on here in DeKalb. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. And we look forward to hearing from you a little bit later. Next, we have Mr. Alan Mitchell. He is the Director of DeKalb County Community Development, and he serves as the Director of Community Development Department for DeKalb County since 2016, and the Interim Director for the Human Services Department until 2017. Prior to his promotion to his position, he served as the Assistant Director of DeKalb's Human and Community Development for over 10 years. He joined DeKalb County in 2005. As the Director of Community Development, Mr. Mitchell oversees the use of funds allocated from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to help develop viable urban communities within DeKalb County, principally benefiting low to moderate income persons. His previous executive experience includes running the South DeKalb Business Incubator and project executive for IBM Corporation, where he retired after 33 years of service in 2002. Additionally, Mr. Mitchell is a U.S. Army veteran, graduating from Officer Candidate School at Fort Benning, Georgia, as a second lieutenant in 1971. Mr. Mitchell obtained a Bachelor's of Arts degree in economics from Virginia State University and a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Spring. And last but not least, we have Mr. Pete Walker. Pete Walker is the President and CEO of the Housing Authority of DeKalb County. He was appointed Executive Director of the authority in October of 2010 and has since led the agency in applying innovative business practices in its approach to affordable housing and development, expanding the authority and its affiliates' missions to maximize opportunities for impact and growth. Mr. Walker began his career in affordable housing development and finance in 1989 as the Finance Director of the Urban Residential Finance Authority in the city of Atlanta, where he was responsible for maintaining the authority's $300 million tax-exempt bond portfolio and all of its fiscal affairs. From 1998 to 2002, Mr. Walker was the Managing Director and Chief Financial Officer for the Atlanta Development Authority. Prior to joining the Housing Authority, he served as President of Mercy Housing Southeast from 2007 to 2010. And Mr. Walker's capacity as President of the MHSE, he was responsible for setting the strategy and direction for expanding their affordable housing development footprint while maintaining a quality portfolio. He is a native of Georgia and received a BA from Clark Atlanta University, where he graduated cum laude. Let's put our hands together for a very The first presentation that we'll have this morning will be from Mr. Andrew Baker, and he will be speaking on the topic of the permitting process for developing projects in DeKalb County, as well as an intro on the permitting process for affordable housing projects that are associated specifically with nonprofit organizations. Okay, and you just come right on over.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am honored and thank you, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, for inviting me to speak and be a part of this panel. And I appreciate you guys' involvement in what you plan to do for DeKalb County. Housing is very important, it's much needed, and I am, as was stated, nothing is built in this county unless it goes through the planning department. So I have a couple of quick questions for you, and that is, what is the zoning district of your property, your house? Raise your hand if you know that zoning district. 3, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson. The zoning district of the house that you own. Okay, how many of you have built housing projects before? Okay, a couple. Well, great, thank you very much. Again, that gives me an idea of what we really want to cover today. Next slide, please. So what I'm here to do today is to just offer some training and some guidance for faith-based organizations and nonprofits, and on how to develop affordable housing through the DeKalb County development process. Next slide, please. So our department actually is vital in the success of what you're planning to do. My department deals with permit intake, which means before you start any project in terms of construction, in terms of land disturbance, you really should come in and get a permit. And I also want to say you really should hire a licensed contractor and a professional to work with you. Okay, the first thing you do is you have to do your land disturbance permit, which is simply to all the horizontal development that you want to do, which is your curbing, your roadways, your water lines, your sewer lines, the trees you're going to cut down. You have to pull a permit to disturb the land. The other thing, the next step in the process really is to pull a building permit. The building permit process is when you're going to start going vertical, when you do your foundation and your framing, and as well as your trade permits, which is all the plumbing and the HVAC and the electrical and all of that. You should hire a licensed contractor. And I know a lot of us have relatives that are able to do some things for us and probably have done it for us. I know some cookies and Junior, and I know them all too, okay? But the whole idea is to make sure you build a quality project that meets the minimum standards of the state of Georgia and DeKalb County. The other area that my department handles are your inspections. Okay, you have to call in for those inspections. So once your professional has the project completed for it, such as your wiring, we go out and look at your wiring to make sure it's done properly. Again, if you're planning to do anything in DeKalb County, you need to get to know the planning department. Next slide, please. Okay, one of the other things that we have to make sure is that you're in compliance with the zoning regulations. And that was why I asked if you knew your specific zoning of the house that you have bought. Okay, and when we're driving around, we see some property and we'll say, that'll be a good spot for affordable housing or senior housing or whatever. But before you buy that property, you need to do your due diligence by visiting the planning department to pull up that information and find out, can you do housing on that property? Is it in a floodplain? We have maps that show exactly which properties are going to flood. Save yourself some hassle by coming and talking and discussing with us. My department will look at the underlying zoning. We'll tell you what your parking requirements are for that property. We'll tell you how tall you can make the property. We'll tell you how many units you can put on that particular property. Every property has zoning regulations on it. And so there are regulations that determine what you can and cannot do for that property. After you went through the process, again, you need to see me because we issued a certificate of occupancy that says this property is safe to be occupied by persons, and you need that certificate of occupancy before you start. It's not up there, but my department also issued business licenses. So when you operate, and I'm gonna call it an affordable housing project, if it's multifamily, senior housing and so forth, you need a license to operate. So you need to see me if you're planning to do those as well. Next slide. One of the ways we try to assist you is you don't have to come to see us. Actually, on our website, DeKalbCountyGA.gov/planning, we also have all the information that you need in terms of forms for permits, building permits, electrical permits, all of those are on the website. We have a digital zoning map that you're able to actually click onto that map. It's a parcel map. If you put in the address or the property ID number of the property you're thinking about buying, it will tell you what the underlying zoning is. If you go farther on my site, it even defines what you can do in what zoning districts. Okay, multifamily zoning districts for multifamily, single family, if you're doing a single family subdivision, we actually have that type of information on our website. Next slide, please. The development standards are on the website. So before you start, again, I want you to hire a professional or licensed contractor. Professionals could be engineering, it could be an architect that's going to draw your renderings up and lay it out. I want you to please check the zoning on the property. We want to make sure, again, all this information is, as far as the website has the zoning map and that other information that's necessary. And you need to determine, are you planning to do what type of housing you're doing? Are you doing affordable housing? Are you doing apartments? Are you trying to do a single family subdivision? What type of cottage housing, assisted living housing, nursing home? What type of housing you're trying to build? Have a conversation with us so we can help direct your path. Check the zoning requirements. Again, talking about how many parking spaces, what are your setbacks, what height you need to do. Tree protection, big issue in DeKalb. People don't want you to cut down a bunch of trees. So you need to know you have to save specimen trees and you can cut down other trees. Which trees are protected, which trees are not that important in terms of Georgia. So there are some steps to understand. The other item there is I would ask you to develop a conceptual map of your layout and so forth. And I would simply say, call me, let's have a roundtable discussion, and we can do those via Zoom as well. And what I would plan to do is to make sure that all people that are going to touch your project can talk to you before you submit. And say, this is what you need to do. This is what the fire marshal needs in terms of a radius to get his trucks in to save people if an emergency happens. Here's the sanitation department. You have to have a commercial account. Here is stormwater person to tell you to make sure you got a detention pond so that your project doesn't cause flooding on the next project. So there are a lot of rules and regulations that you need to understand, but I would call or convene a meeting of all those representative reviewing departments to provide insight for you. Next slide, please. And so to do that, even GISs and what's its geographical information systems, they have to assign you a street name or an address so that when there is an emergency, the fire department know exactly where you are and what it is. Sanitation, as I mentioned, watershed. Fire marshal, environmental review. Certain people might have to have the health department and so forth. So all of these departments are involved, and what I would do is assemble those representatives to be able to assist you with the process. Next slide. So the quick process that I want to highlight is, again, you can go to our website and you can select the appropriate guides and forms as necessary. The checklist is there. Complete those and you submit them. Our county personnel then will be assigned to review your application, and those are all those different departments that I mentioned before. If your permit requires any review, then of course it goes to all of those through the process. And then once you start the construction, again, we conduct all those inspections and will issue a certificate of occupancy. Next slide. It can be complicated. Next slide. and it can get more complicated. Okay? And the reason of why it can be, though, you know, the campus under consent decree dealing with sewer. And so before you start anything, we have a problem with sewers in this county. You need to determine whether or not we have capacity for the number of units you're proposing. There may be some cost involved with that. So you need to, first thing I want you to do is to fill out that capacity form, submit it to Watershed so they can say, yes, we do have capacity in the area that you're looking at doing the construction. Next slide. GIS was one, dealing with the address. And next slide. Because I just want to make it as simple as possible, because these gentlemen have a bunch of information that they can share with you. But again, I encourage you, before you buy the property, before you come up with and invest any money, come see the planning department so that you can understand how many units you can build, what's your underlying zoning? Are you gonna have to rezone that property? Will it require a special land use permit, which means you'd have to go before the Board of Commissioners and change the land before you build on it? So again, my name is Andrew Baker. I'm the Director for the Planning and Sustainability Department.
Don't leave just yet, because you went back and you talked about stormwater and the water sewer capacity, because that's something that how many of you understand that we are under consent decree? If so, raise your hand. Okay, that's very good, and I know that there's a lot of real estate agents. I see Miss Sandy G. Johnson here, who is a huge advocate for affordable housing and plain and simply new communities. I see Stacy Thibodeau. I think Ms. Brinkley's back there. I could go down the line because I see a lot of my real estate agents. And what we're seeing here is as our communities change, the professions are being shifted. Because now when you see folks that are coming in and they're buying homes, oftentimes they have quick closes that they remove everyone from the process except the seller. But as it relates to water sewer capacity, that is very important, because that has been one of the things that has honestly in many instances hindered us moving forward, because we've simply not had the capacity to issue individuals that sought to build communities and or businesses the water capacity that they need. I also wanted you to talk about when, if you have land or property and you want to build and it does not have the proper zoning, you may need to do up zoning because you're seeking a higher density. What that's called is a SLUP, which is a special land use permit. I see a friend here who recently did some building and had to go through that process. And one of the things that we encounter as members of the Board of Commissioners, a lot of folks still want R100. But we're seeing a shift in market as it relates to the new generation. So I often tell communities, because it can be a delicate process, because when you apply for a SLUP, you have to go before the community. And if you think you experience difficult, some of them don't want to hear anything except what they want to hear. But I just want you to know that as commissioners, we are there to be fair and equitable, because everyone has a right. So I urge you, when you go through that process, when Mr. Baker spoke of the conceptual map, we call it elevations, it has your facade. It also, we're very specific now, because I think in DeKalb, after years, we've now reached a conclusion that if we don't ask or we aren't specific, you get what you get. So we tend to be very specific on everything from the materials to the type of entry, whether it's a monumental type entry, because if you drive through DeKalb, you don't see continuity. And me, I envision a new DeKalb. So how do we help people that have existing structures modernize? And I really believe we need a fund, a pool of money to help them. But as we're moving forward, you know, when you come before us, make sure you have great renderings. And, you know, as it relates also to housing, when you're dealing with multiple families or even single family communities, one of the things that we tended to do is require HOAs. And we also limit the amount of rentals in residential communities, because that is really important. And that's why I have great concern for many of our older communities that are vulnerable, because previously we didn't do that. So now we say no more than 10%, but those aren't the communities that are under attack by investors. So we've got to figure that out. But
Commissioner, if I could add to it, you're right. On the SLUP special land use permit requirements, the best thing to do is that we require you to have a pre-submittal meeting. So you should conduct those meetings with those surrounding residents and explain to them how valuable this development you're proposing is to the community and how they will benefit from it. Because those individuals, if you don't have them on your side, when you go before the community council, then the planning commission, then the board of commissioners, they're going to continue to be a thorn in your side in terms of trying to get the density you're proposing, because the only thing most people want is, if I got a single family house, I want a single family house next to me. So you have to build those relationships before you go through the formal process of a special land use permit.
Absolutely, and honestly, people don't expect much. It has amazed me as an elected official that folk have felt they received so little so long that, you know, you show up, why are you different? So just be prepared, because we're all here to help you be successful, because we truly need the housing. And I do see a question.
Thank you very much for your time. My development firm is very interested in senior living and affordable housing. You mentioned that you guys drive through, you see properties that could be good for this or that. In your office, you have some designated areas, let's say where senior living would be very important.
And actually what I said is, you guys drive by and you see properties that you think will be appropriate. And so my suggestion is that if you see it, definitely, then you can call us and let's verify that you can do the density and the number of units you want to do it to make the numbers work. We do have, if you were, say, looking for, well, I'll say in our mixed use activity centers, we have circles on our maps that talk about town center, or we talk about neighborhood center. Those areas are where we want the higher densities, because they can activate the commercial and stuff that's in that particular area. And we want you to be close to those types of things. So the easy push is to look at our maps, and where you see multi-family density already as the underlying zoning, that's where you can build automatically without going through a slum and without having to talk to the surrounding neighborhoods. That's why if you can find a property that already allows the use, then that's what you can do that. So,
thank you.
And let me say to everyone here, if you have an address and you need more information, that's why I'm here. As well as your commissioners in other districts, you know. One thing, we all are clear, I would hope, on the importance of housing. So if you have an address and you need more information so that you understand the current density limitations that are there, just reach out and we'll walk you through. Also, there are certain pockets that, in my opinion, are absolutely suitable. Along, you know, depending on where you go in DeKalb, that's going to dictate, because sinus for the real estate agents. Location, location, location. If you go north, oftentimes you're dealing with higher property values, okay? Although even here in DeKalb South, we have seen a huge increase in the value of our homes. And it's in such a way that in many instances, if you were to sell your own home, you couldn't afford to buy it.
That's right.
But in particular, I'm urging people to develop along Candler Road.
Yes.
Candler Road is still an excellent area. Candler Road is the gateway to South DeKalb, and until we have meaningful development there, and we gotta do it. I'm sorry to say it, but it's time we take more into our own hands, and that's why we as elected officials are here, because we should be telling you this. Okay, areas along Glenwood, absolutely great right now for development.
Commissioner, let me touch that just real quickly and just simply say that's some good advice. Just because the property has a commercial establishment or something on it today, it doesn't mean that you can't change that property and put apartments or something along those corridors. One of the issues we have is we have too much commercial, and that's why you see it being underutilized and in bad shape. But if we can get people to invest and purchase those properties and redevelop them with housing, those people living in those units can activate and spend in the commercial area that's over here and make those more viable. We really need to look on the south side of DeKalb and start uplifting our commercial corridors and bringing in new investment and bringing people to spend and activate those businesses that are on that side of DeKalb.
And at this moment, you're making a great investment. You are making a great investment when you come into particularly South DeKalb. Also the Belvedere area. That is an area that is transitioning quickly. So we're seeing the communities transition, and one of the things that Mr. Mitchell just said when we spoke of commercial, I get the call all the time, Commissioner, we want to see more retail. We want more diversity in food options. We had to move mountains to get Chipotle over on Wesley Chapel. We did not have the water sewer capacity. I believe they actually purchased a frac tank to hold and release water and sewer during off-peak times. And I asked them, do not give up on us, make the investment, because when they came to see me at that time, I remember they said, well, we want a restaurant. And I said immediately, if you're selling chicken, fried rice, or burgers, we have enough of that. We want healthy food options. I specifically asked for a Chipotle, a Starbucks, certain other restaurants that we did not have, and they delivered. And even with the comprehensive plan, it was not a proper zoning technically, but we had to fight because I knew for us that was an improvement. So as you build these communities, as we see an increase in properties, you will then better position us to recruit industry and retail. It is a numbers game. Right now, even when we have food deserts, if you call and I speak with Whole Foods, they will immediately ask two things. What are the amount of rooftops and what is the median household income for a defined area? As soon as you say it, they will tell you whether or not they will come. So the key to what we're experiencing here to see us look like who we are is housing. Housing. And any other questions? Sandy, I think I saw your hand. Are you good? Okay.
If it's okay.
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you all. An elephant in the room for me on part of the conversation. I hope I don't put you on the spot here. But I sat in on Commissioner Terry's webinar last night, and a number came up that spoke to some of what I think conversation is about doing business in DeKalb. 24% of the cost of building a house, and this was the middle discussion, 24% is fees and permits from DeKalb County. Is that an accurate reflection of what it takes to do the applications and the fees and then that $5,000 water sewer thing, whether you got one toilet or 25 toilets? Can you speak to that for?
Sure, and I'll get brief, but I'll simply say that the fee structure in DeKalb County is as competitive as anywhere else in terms of pulling a building permit, a construction permit, where it's competitive as anybody, probably less, because I don't think they've been adjusted in a while. But the fees are based on the ICC code, based on the values that you say your construction is. And so we run a formula based on what you're saying it is, and then we calculate it based on that, and that's how much the fees are. So I would say we're very much good. And yes, the water sewer fees are high to tap into the system, but I think that's why you try to leverage those costs with the different programs that the next speakers are going to talk about, tax credits and so forth, to try to make your numbers work.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Linda Williams. I'm a commercial broker. Thanks for having me here today, Lorraine. But what I would like to say is that, speaking about what you said about the types of businesses that come into our community, we have to look at what we bring into our community, because we want to lift our community and engage people. When we bring quality businesses, technology, quality business, that improves the livelihood of the people that live in the community, and therefore they can afford the type of homes that you are proposing. Thank you.
You're welcome. And also let me say, because this seminar is about one thing, we're talking housing, but I also talk economic development. Because in many instances, as it is written, somewhere between Genesis and Revelation, we have not because we ask not. We do not own enough businesses in our communities. Even when you're looking at that Chipotle I mentioned, it took someone to go through the qualification process, be vetted, receive the loan, build a structure and manage. There's no reason we can't do that. We've got to get out of the mentality of waiting when we live here and we understand what we need. So again, if you know people that are interested in owning, whether it's franchising or starting their own business, reach out, okay? And thank you, Mr. Baker, because I know we're long. Okay, hopefully you all are learning some things here. That's what we're here to do. The next presentation that I have is Decide DeKalb Development Authority with Mr. Dorian Davar. He will be speaking on the topic of tools and incentives as well as resources for affordable housing development as an overview of incentives in the toolbox that can be utilized by nonprofit organizations and resources for affordable housing development projects. Come on up, Mr. Davar.
Hey, good morning, DeKalb County, and I appreciate the hand clap that Mr. Bureau is especially important. But again, good morning, you all. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. And I have to say thank you, Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, for your leadership in this space and inviting me and Decide DeKalb to the conversation. Extremely excited to talk about this stuff. So again, my name is Dorian Davar. I am president of Decide DeKalb Development Authority. We are your primary economic development organization here in DeKalb County. So what does that mean? That means job growth. We add to job growth, we add to the tax base, we recruit businesses. We have businesses that are currently here in DeKalb County expand. So, and I'm gonna give you all a couple of examples as to why that's important, how that ties into affordable housing. So in the past 2 weeks, we had the pleasure of attending the groundbreaking for Pepsi in the city of Tucker, which is DeKalb County, obviously. And that was a huge groundbreaking as an expansion project. We're in competition with different states across the country, but they decided to stay here and expand in advanced manufacturing. Next, we attended a grand opening ceremony for Leo Grocery Store over here in DeKalb County as well. Yeah, so we attended that groundbreaking. It's a phenomenal one. I mean, grand opening. About a month ago, we did a groundbreaking for a movie studio here in DeKalb County. So all of these things happened within the past month. Grand opening, groundbreaking, right? The conversation that always happens when we have this conversation with these businesses is all about workforce. What does your workforce look like? Is it diverse enough? All right, that's always the question, diversity. You can't have a diverse workforce without attainable and quality housing. So that's why this is an important conversation for Decide DeKalb, and this is why we even play in this space. Again, it's all about business retention and growth for us, but it does tie into workforce and it does tie into housing. So with that being said, I want to really briefly talk about what we've been doing here at Decide DeKalb to really attack this affordable housing and attainable housing piece, to make it a reality here in DeKalb County. So again, so we can be the most robust, the greatest county, and really business friendly and community friendly because we are active members of the community. So Allison, if you could skip to the slide about affordable housing, I'm gonna jump around a little bit. So Decide DeKalb is a relatively new organization. So we've incentivized housing projects in the past. I think we've done our best. But one of the first things I did when I became president in 2019 was to really take a look at affordable housing and create a policy around affordable housing. So I'll get into some of the incentives and the tools that we have to promote economic development and to promote affordable housing. But first, I wanted to make sure we laid a great groundwork and a framework for how we attack affordable housing. So at minimum, all of our incentives require that if you're building a housing project through our incentives, they require 20% of your housing units to be affordable at 80% AMI. That's the floor, all right, 20% of your units at 80% AMI. And I'll go through an example of what all that means. Next, you can do 10% of your housing units at 60% AMI. All right, and then we want to make sure we set aside units for public service households, for individuals, teachers, firefighters, things that are important for our community. Now, this policy, we didn't just do this because we thought it was a good idea. We actually did this in a thoughtful way. We brought in stakeholders that work in affordable housing, brokers, real estate developers, affordable housing experts to really come up with this policy, and it mirrors some of the policies that are also throughout the region and some of the other jurisdictions. So we're happy about this one. So I really wanted to, as we talk about incentives, just keep this in your mind about what our policy here is at the side of DeKalb. So Allison, if you could back it up and let's talk about some of those incentives that we offer. So the first incentive that we offer would be our one of many that we can offer that really attack affordable housing that would be beneficial for this conversation would be property tax incentives. So bond for title. So next slide, please, Allison. So bond for title. So under this program, the side of DeKalb would essentially hold title to your project, and that could be on a 10, 15, or a 20-year term. And in exchange for that, we will provide a reduction in your property taxes based upon policy guidelines. We won't get into all of it. I can talk about that in 30 minutes in itself. But the idea is that if you bring us a great project, it has a housing component, and again, think about my affordable housing policy. If you bring us a great project that hits a certain threshold of $10 million or above, we can start having a conversation about a bond for title program. All right, so $10 million is a high bar, but we do have a lot of projects that hit this bar in DeKalb County. So in 10, 15, 20-year terms, we can reduce your property taxes. It's a significant benefit, and companies do appreciate this incentive. Next slide, please. We do follow a fixed, reasonable valuation method when we're talking about these incentives. We treat these incentives with a lot of care and a lot of effort. We're really thoughtful about how we apply these incentives because these can be a huge benefit to a project. You're talking about a $100 million project. This incentive could equal somewhere around $20 million in incentives, all right, and a reduction in property taxes. So we make sure we deploy this tool in a meaningful way. Next slide, please. And under this, just one of the guidelines that I think is important, projects that demonstrate economic development benefits to the county, and keeping with the side of DeKalb's mandate to develop and promote trade, commerce, and industry and employment opportunities for the public good. So it has to be a great project. We look at a lot of projects. We go through a great vetting process, a tucker process. We score all of our projects. We take it to our county commissioners for conversations, and then we also take it to my board of directors for a conversation, and also approve before we move forward. Every project doesn't make it, but again, it's a high bar. Next slide, please. I already did this part about the capital investment having to be greater than 10 million. We perform a fiscal impact analysis. The number of jobs created is important as well. And again, I'll provide a resource at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So that's the affordable housing piece, and I'm gonna try to read this one back here, but I wanted to provide a mock scenario on this one. So if you come to us and you say, Dorian, we're interested in the bonds for title program and any other programs that I didn't mention today, we'll say, all right, you're building 200 units, and at 20% of AMI, what does that look like? So 200 units, 220% of those units, at 80%, that equals 40 affordable housing units. So 200 unit development, 40 affordable housing units. Income limit for one person in the household today would be $54,000. Income limit for a 4-person household would be $77,100. And the household can pay no more than 30% of the income towards rent. All right, hopefully that makes sense. So that's just a quick mock housing scenario. Next slide, please. Next slide, we pick this one. All right, another tool. So we've already talked about bonds for title program, phenomenal tool used across the country, used especially in the state of Georgia. Tax allocation district. So the commissioner mentioned this earlier. This is another tool we have in our tool here at the side of DeKalb. In DeKalb County, our organization actually manages 3 on behalf of the Board of Commissioners. We have 3 tax allocation districts, 2 along the Memorial Drive corridor, 1 outside the perimeter, 1 within the perimeter. And then we have a 3rd at Briar Cliff. So we currently have 3, and we are looking to create more. And just for context, TAS are relatively new to DeKalb County in use. We recently launched our Kensington Tax Allocation District program. So if you're familiar with Sock in the Streets program, that huge announcement, funds from the TAD actually supported that project. And throughout Atlanta, it's a robust tool. The city of Atlanta utilizes this very heavily. Atlantic Station is here because of the tax allocation district. The Atlanta Bell Line is here because of the tax allocation district. So a very great tool. We're happy to have this tool here in DeKalb County. And we will utilize this tool to support affordable housing deals and projects. Under the guise of, again, that bar that we said, that floor we said with respect to 20% of the units at a minimum have to be affordable. And this is a great tool because the bonds for title program was, again, it's over 10, 15, 20 years. It's a reduction in the property taxes. Through this tool, we can either issue bonds And that's an immediate cash infusion, or we could provide grants, or we could provide a really attractive loan for your project. And that's upfront. Next slide, please.
And Mr. Davar, everyone in here, show of hands, this is the professor in me. Everyone understands what AMI is? Okay, yeah, that's your area median income, okay, good. I just want to make sure we all have the same conversation. And I want to remind Mr. Davar, because when we talk about tax allocation districts, they're great because they deal with a defined area. And you're able to utilize that money specifically for that area. We need one on Memorial Drive. No, Candler Road. We've had that conversation so that we can take that money and reinvest it. So you told me to send emails, but I think that's just something you need to go on and do. And I'm just saying, because we all know it's needed, because that's a tool that's in the toolbox, we can put that money back. So I'm gonna tell you, to have this in an email. We should do what we need to do, Mr. Department. Go on and do it. Okay, now you go right out.
So thank you for spending my time here. And, thank you for calling me out. That's an awful conversation. All right, so tax allocation, so yes, to the commissioner's comment, they are tag boundaries, this is within a specific district. You can go to our website and take a look at the tags we're going to have in place, and more will be coming online in the future with the support of the great Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson. Next slide, please. Brownfield, so this is another tool that we have. So Brownfields is an amazing tool that's through the Environmental Protection Agency through the federal government. We were actually just awarded an additional Brownfield grant because we've done so good with our current one of $2.5 million. So that means $2.5 million for Brownfield grants throughout DeKalb County. And we've utilized this tool actually for housing development here in DeKalb County already. Pullman Yards, if y'all are familiar with Pullman Yards, they came to us, we provided a little bit south of $1 million in brownfield grants to remediate that property. So that in our brownfields, we have brownfields throughout DeKalb County. Think of an old closed down gas station or a dry cleaner, all right? You have to clean that up. And sometimes that's a barrier when you're talking about development. So if I come in as a developer and say, I want to develop this into something else, but just a brownfield cost is just too expensive and too cost prohibitive. That's where this side of DeKalb comes in with the grant, the low cost loan through our brownfields program. So we have this tool, it's a phenomenal tool. We're actually going to be rolling out some interesting stats and mapping tools around this program that we'll announce at a later date. But this is another tool that we use for affordable housing as well. Next slide, please. All right, so in closing, I would just like to say this: through the leadership of folks like Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson and our other elected officials here in DeKalb County, we're doing phenomenal things at this side of DeKalb. One of the things that is a goal of each and every single year is that we would like to unlock a different tool for our toolbox here in this side in DeKalb County on incentives. So last year was tax allocation districts. This year we'll be probably adding 2 more tools to the toolkit, and then next year we'll be adding more. We're a relatively new organization, but we've done phenomenal things. And again, with the leadership that we have in place, I think we'll continue to do a great job. So with that being said, please take a look at our website. It's always updated. You can join our mailing list to learn about these tools that are currently online and those that are coming in the pipeline. So decidedecalb.com is our website. Please join again, our mailing list and take a look at our website. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I just have one online that someone wanted to ask. Ms. Davidson said, I'm sure you might get that on. Sorry about that, everyone. Hello. I'm monitoring online, and Ms. Davidson wants to know how the tax bond affects nonprofits.
It doesn't. So nonprofits aren't taxed anyway with property taxes, so they don't pay property tax, so it wouldn't be a value for them. But we have other tools for nonprofits.
Question. We're stating that Candler Road is an attractive area to build. I do like church sits right there with the changes over the flat, so right there at taxes. Would that still be considered in that range?
Absolutely.
Build on our property.
Absolutely. And there's a huge need in that area, all along Cameron. And again, you are seeing property values increase. If you turn down and go through to Tony Valley community, gentrification, I defined it as a brick house painted white with a colorful door. Almost every other house in those communities have been gentrified. And those communities gentrify, you see an increase in property value. You see an increase in the AMI, area median household income. And that's when you begin to see development. So, you know, I'm very sensitive to what folks say because I care. That's how I ended up here. God has a sense of humor. So for me, you know, I have folk who write and say, well, Commissioner, why is it we only see things happen when certain folk come? And I'm telling the truth sitting here. I get those emails, I can pull them up, I can verify what I say. That's not how I want people to feel. But what you're seeing is when people come, things are changing, often for the better. There's some doors I want to go knock on myself and say, are you in here? Because I know you see this yard, these shutters. What's wrong? So we have to be stronger as community. And not only that, let me say to you that I'm very proud to say that my office, we participate in community cleanup days, Sandy. If you call us, because there's sometimes we just have to intervene and help each other.
Right.
And I've been to at least 3 communities where there were a home or 2 that looked so awful that the community came together. And we went there, we redid the landscaping that day.
Yeah.
We showed up. And when we left, it looked right. And it's unfortunate, but if that's what we've got to do for each other, we have to hold each other to a higher degree of accountability. So just let us know and we will be right there with you and we'll put it in our newsletter because we have to fix this ourselves in many instances. Yes, Pastor Harris?
Question about your down payment assistance, I know they were on hold, and you all looking to relaunch that as a performance.
Yes, and great question. I'm glad you mentioned the down payment assistance program. It is actually still operating, and there actually been some activity in that program. So just for context, we do decide DeKalb. We have a program called DeKalb, which is a down payment assistance program. It's been a great program, but as the market rates started rising due to the Fed interest rates, that program became less viable. So we're looking at ways to kind of rework that program so it's back online in a more meaningful way. But there has been some activity, yes. So it's not gone.
But I know on the website that it's currently unavailable, but you're saying they can contact.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we got it. Thank you.
And there is another option. In 2019 in Stonecrest, we opened Hope at Stonecrest. And since its inception, we have issued now over $10 million in down payment assistance with the assistance of PNC Bank and Operation Hope. And that's done through my district, District 7. So each and every week when you receive my newsletter, when you see Kimberly Pinkett down at the bottom, and what's the other young lady's name?
LaWanda Ross, I believe.
Ms. Ross, if you will sign up, if you need credit repair, this is like the Southern Baptist Church. We take you as you are. Don't be ashamed to show up. You come on in here so we can fix you. And starting today, we create a plan for you. We clean your credit if that's necessary. If not, we pull the credit. If you're good, based upon your income, we tell you what you qualify for. And we cover 100% down payment assistance up to $250,000 to create homeowners in DeKalb, because we've got to get away from this renting mentality. I've had too many folk call my office and say that their rent has increased $300 to $500 and nothing has changed with my income. I can't do this. They can afford to purchase cheaper than they're renting. So the market is correcting the errors of some people, but then there are generational renters who, but for never being told that you can do better, are in the condition they're in. And it's not a good place because these folk can't afford it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Richard Brandt. I have a question. The first question is number one on, the project over there in Stonecrest on the, you going down Stonecrest Mall on the left. Was that a tax allocation, project? as I know they have it based on the income, those apartments and stuff like that, it's on the left side of the road, based on income, do you know anything about that?
I'm not familiar with that project, but I can't answer the question with certainty that that was not a tax allocation district project. There are only 5 tax allocation districts in DeKalb County currently.
Okay, question number 2. On Columbia Drive, would any of that area be considered in the tax allocation district?
Not today, but again, to the commissioner's comments toward me specifically directly, we don't work toward that.
When I see you again, we'll. Yes, Ms. Halen.
Where can we find out what the tax allocation is?
Good question. So go to our website, www.decidecap.com. We have mapping tools on our website. And we also have a brief narrative of each tax allocation district that we currently manage here in DeKalb County. And again, we manage 3. There are 2 others. There's one in Doraville and there's another one in Avondale Estates. Those are only 5 we have in the county.
And let me say too, we will be sending out all of this in our newsletter. And Allison, I think we have it on our website, the tax allocation districts. We have a whole toolbox up there. I think sometimes folks don't expect all that information to be up there. But if you go to our District 7 website, Cochran-Johnson.com, you will find all of the tax allocation districts, and we will be sending out these presentations and adding them to our website as well.
One quick question, does tax allocation districts, to me, I became aware of them as a part of the school group. What's different? Is there a distinction between tax allocation districts?
Great question. So no, so the tax allocation district, so we have, and I'll just do it real quickly. You set a floor when you create a district. You say, I'm going to take this boundaries within this area to be a tax. Anything that we generate in property tax income above $1 goes into a fund that we set aside. To the commission's point out, we need a fund that's set aside that we can direct toward any capital improvement projects. So on your property tax bill, you're typically taxed by the county and the school board. All right, and so state law has it to where the school board has to actively participate in a tax allocation district. In DeKalb County, they currently do not participate in any tax allocation districts. Whereas in the city of Atlanta, they participate in, I think, all 10, if I'm not mistaken now. So we do need a participation that makes for a larger pot. But can we move forward with that? I'm sure. But this is about collaboration and working closely with our school board to make them participate in economic development that way. Good question, though.
Yes. Go right ahead.
You are my commissioner, Marie.
Yes, ma'am.
I was taking care of my mom in East Point when you mentioned about God having a sense of humor. Did not have a clue as to how he was doing this thing. Had a home in right off of Brownsville Road, Road, that area. But I had been taking care of my mom for the last 4.5 years. She did not go into some of these filthy, messed up from the floor of nursing homes that sometimes didn't have enough people in order to take care of our loved ones as they should be adequately taken care of. But God strengthened me each and every day. Called her on home on the 12th. And that's one of the reasons I'm here personally and not on Zoom. I want to thank you because I've been watching you. I've been watching you, how you have taken care of the marginalized. People that have medical issues as well as mental and emotional issues. And I thank you. And I know you God's daughter. And I know without a doubt that you don't find it robbery to prostrate yourself and pray and ask for strength each and every day as to how to direct you. Now, my question is, I hear the word affordable, and to make it plain and clear, I feel springs in my ear because I say affordable to whom? Because see, in Georgia, we don't have adequate labor laws for people to make money so they can afford to have homes. So they can afford to have safety in wherever they live, wherever they choose to live. Whether it's a home, a mobile home, it's just not there. So when we speak of affordable, I'm speaking right now for people that are asking me to come and say, use the word equitable. Because you define them best. And that's what I want to see. That's what they want to see. And let me also say, I'm speaking for some males, and let me say some Black males that love their families, that want to take care of their families, that want to be there for their families, and they want to be there not just working 2 or 3 jobs. They want to be there sometimes to be able to pick up their babies, to be able to sit down with their children during an hour when they can't sit down with their children. But because we have these jacked up laws here in Georgia for a very long time, very too long, and they don't want unions. And I'm for unions. One of the reasons why I am for unions, because union jobs provide at least a livable wage where there's possibility and hope and owning something and not being tied to being a renter. And I'm going to use God's word. And his word is knock and the door shall be open. Seek and ye shall find. I'm knocking and I'm seeking. And I'm also saying my Father, and hopefully if there's somebody that know him like I know him, say our Father says there's cattle on the hill, all of us, all, including some pale sisters and brothers that we have that live in trailers. And as I learned when I substituted in South Carolina, that they are also marginalized because even their pale sisters and brothers look at them and they call them trailer trash. So I'm speaking for all of that today. And ma'am, let me also say that Fred Astaire's woman, white partner said, I did all of what he did, but only if he backwards. And backwards, thank you, sister. And backwards. So that's what I'd like to see more. I want to see it. They want to see it. They need to feel it. And some of our males, all of them are not crazy and taking guns and robbing people. But a lot of them are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And they need help. And some of them don't have the tools to ask for help as a male. Because as a woman, I know I can stand here, I can cry, I probably could fall on the floor, and I'd still be a woman. But as a male, can he do that and still be considered a strong Black man? I'm speaking for him.
I understand and thank you. Because, you know, this is a much deeper and different conversation because I found in government that many of us have an issue acknowledging that we are not all treated equitably. And when we look at many of the issues that we deal with in community, we treat crime, we discuss crime, but we don't treat the byproduct of the issue and the underlying cause, which is economics and a lack of opportunity. So I don't want to venture, but one thing that I will say, because I know that we have people who need to speak, and they have other engagements. But to bring home what was just said, I read a lot. There was recently a study done actually last year that looked at income and race disparities. And that study found that the greatest racial disparities in income was in Metro Atlanta. So when I read the topic, the header, and I kept reading down, I thought what I was going to find, and it was going to say that that was amongst those who had the least education. But what you found was the greatest disparity was amongst those with the highest level of professional degrees. Because what you found is that a doctor at Emory, who's African-American, is making $220, may be working alongside a counterpart that's making $260 with the exact same education. But because incomes are not disclosed or to be discussed, you never realize that you've not been treated equity. So racism hides in many fashions and forms.
Sexism.
And what ought to be happening on the federal level with our congressmen and senators is legislation that prohibits a lack of disclosure of incomes, because that would make people be fair and equal.
Mm.
And it's a shame, it's necessary, but it is. So that is an argument that we need to take to the highest levels of government. It supersedes me, but it affects us every day, because when you have more, you do more.
Yes.
And oftentimes, there are those amongst us who are limited only because of the color of their skin, and I do acknowledge that. And Mr. Davar, I'm gonna bring you onto your seat, and I'm gonna send you this email I'm typing on. So we can get this tax allocation district along Columbia Drive and Camp. We are going to do what needs to be done here in DeKalb. And, Mr. Baker, you've already presented, haven't you? Yes, you did. And we've had Mr. Davar, Mr. Mitchell. You come on up. Mr. Mitchell, of course, is going to speak on the topic of financing and affordable housing developments, as well as an overview of the community development block grant funding program and financing for low-income housing tax credits, which are very important. Because oftentimes for affordable housing, folk won't touch those type projects unless they are given credits, as well as National Housing Trust Fund, Ownership Housing Development Assistance Program, and others that DeKalb offers to incentives and finance housing for affordable housing associated with nonprofits. And let me say, I thank God for the people that I sit with today. You all are good men, good people. And Mr. Mitchell is honestly one of the brightest folk that I've had the ability to interact with here in DeKalb County. This man has built every senior center you see. He's just phenomenal. And sometimes we don't recognize as much as we should the power of individuals and what they bring to the table. So thank you, Mr. Mitchell, and I'll let you have it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning to all. We'll wait and get my slide deck up. Should be momentary. But what I'll do in the interim is try to get some preliminaries out of the way so I can get a sense of who's here. Again, my name is Alan Mitchell, Director of Community Development Department here in DeKalb County. I'm excited to be here. I will talk about financing of affordable housing, but what I also do is give an intro to individuals that perhaps don't understand, or but would like to understand what affordable housing is all about. It's a very difficult and challenging task, and not understood by a lot. A lot of individuals might say we need more affordable housing, but in order to effectively do that, it's an onerous task. It's no different than someone saying, build me a building. I build buildings every day. So it's in order to build a building, it's a mammoth exercise to be able to do that. So it's no different than what I'll show you toward the bitter end is a series of projects that we participated in. We actually see a building. You might say, what's affordable housing? I'll show you many examples of projects I've personally associated with in various roles. In affordable housing arenas, we don't build those buildings. We actually act as a partner, and we'll lend there. We lend money with the request to have affordable housing as a result of investments. So you'll see examples of my good friend Pete Walker, who's at the end of the table. I'll show you examples of projects where Pete actually had his team build affordable housing, but we had a requirement because we were a lender to his project, along with tax credits, to be able to get affordable housing units for you at certain income levels. And I'll show you those later. So we talk about 50% AMI, 60% AMI. Those are specific numbers that I'll share with you later on that indicate income levels so that those individuals that live there can exceed the income limits that are governed by the federal requirements. So I'm just trying to connect the dots to let you know affordable means affordable to a series of individuals. The other thing I'll do in my slides is talk about individuals that need affordable and things that homeless. You might say homeless individuals. Yes, I do a lot of that every day. Where we provide millions of dollars to support individuals that are in the streets. And what we have to do is provide them housing. And for them, a housing could be an apartment or a hotel or some facility that we provide funding for to be able to have them to stay. Then you have the extreme where you might have someone that Dorian talked about, effectively where you're getting a $500,000 home. There's a down payment assistance program that they can get into. So there's a huge gap between homeless and those that are wealthy that might get income. But everyone needs something affordable based on their income levels. It's all about income. It links back to education. It links back to jobs. And so the issues are jobs, education, providing income to be able to obtain housing at various data points. So one can go through the spectrum of being homeless to having a $500,000 home over a period of years. If one's educated, one gets income, one gets a better job, and you can transcend the area. But in all cases, it's affordable because of the requirements to have income. Because when you sit down with the bank's only going to give you money that you can afford. That's it. So if you're a homeless individual with no income, you can only live where we're going to place you based on our federal dollars that give you a spot to stay. So those are my preambles. Then my slide deck is up, I'll start and I'll try to be brief. Do we have any developers in the room? We have 1, 2, how many developers? Have any other real estate individuals that have had experience with affordable housing? Okay. It looks like the majority of the people here have an interest in affordable housing. And you like to whet your appetite about things that are here. So I've geared a slide deck which will cover both. Basics you need to know about affordable housing, also things that perhaps will help a developer enhance their skills. So I'll start with a project. This slide tends to go very quickly through 3 data points where a project will start. It's basically a vision that you can see. It's also a site might be available or a funding opportunity might be available. And that tends to be the genesis of a project. So you can relate to all of those. The vision tends to propagate most of the ideas. One has a vision, and that vision is transcended into doing a lot of work to be able to get you to the posture where you can have affordable housing. Next slide. The process for doing this is expressed on the next transparency. And also get that. And this gives you the fact that it's a long, tedious process. It's not a quick process. You have to have a lot of due diligence with regard to actually bringing on a project. And most individuals have to create single purpose entities. That's a unique corporation that if you dissolve all the assets belongs only for that entity. And or if you're a church, you might have some churches here, and I see Pastor Harris is here. You create what's called a community development corporation, the CDC, to allow you to be able to have a government work with the CDC and not the church. So the advice I give people, many churches have come to get technical assistance, but you must create a nonprofit. So we don't have access to the church folks. You need to keep a separate entity altogether. And most projects I'll show you will always have a separate entity because it gives you more flexibility to have a CDC. But they build the construction process and the preparation process is very long. But when you actually get to build something, it takes at least 2 years to build anything. Okay. And after that, it's perpetuated to a long period of time. So this is not a simple, quick process. Anyone can get involved in this. It requires day-to-day due diligence. But this gives you a perspective as the length of an affordable housing project. So vision today might be 4 years later. The vision last year might be 3 years later. So it's not a quick and dirty transaction. And it requires a lot of due diligence and also forces you to get a team together of experts. If you're not familiar with what to do, I insist that you get people that can supplement your knowledge. Do not venture into affordable housing development if you're a novice and you do not understand. Hire, request, seek individuals that have confidence in this area. Otherwise, you lose your shirt. You have to get help in something like this. This is it's not rocket science, but it's very difficult and complex if you don't understand it. Next slide, Allison. So here is the financial aspects. So one might say, how do you fund an affordable housing project? And what we've got listed there is a series of transactions. I'll go through them, but they are, first of all, hard debt. Most of them are funded by, first of all, the word subsidy. It's very unusual to have a non-subsidy affordable housing component. All of them have some form of subsidy. So you gotta think of the word subsidy for affordable housing. They're like ham and eggs, they go together. It's very rare to see a big developer with millions of dollars that would just do affordable housing for the sake of doing it. I'm still looking for someone to come in and put their money into an affordable housing project without any subsidy. In essence, it just doesn't exist. So the government incentivizes individuals that are wealthy to bring on affordable housing, and they got enormous fees for doing that. So think of the word subsidy and think of the word affordable housing. So that list of things there, and you're gonna copy this later, transcends the things that you can effectively use for development of affordable housing. The list is fairly long, I hope you can see it, but the most important, impactful tool that's there is the low investment housing tax credit called LIHTC. And I'll get into that later on for those of you who might be interested in it. But with that potpourri of things on the wall there, the most important one that stands out is the low investment housing tax credit, which in the United States is the most significant, most impactful tool to be used for affordable housing. From California to New York, from Maine to Florida, any place you go in the United States, if you want affordable housing, you always find that the most powerful tool to get affordable housing is a low investment housing tax credit process. If anyone interested in affordable housing, you really have to understand the dynamics of how LIHTC works. If you're just curious, that's one thing, but if you're going to be effective in bringing on affordable housing, you must understand the dynamics of how the LIHTC works. And I'll take you through those transparencies very quickly in a couple of minutes. Next chart. The topics that Allison, the next one. The next, I'm going to cover specifically from the list these items that we actually fund. I have dollars that we can provide through loan applications in this meeting. So the list there is Home Investment Partnership. I've got Community Development Block Grant Funds, HUD Section 108, NSP, CHODOs, LIHTC, tax exempt bonds, and in certain cases grants. So Home Investment Partnership, that's a federal program, it's a block grant program that I'll get into. And I'll take you through those things where we have applications and the ability to fund individuals with dollars to bring on affordable housing, of being a partner and a lender in certain cases to bring the project on board. The next transparency. So in terms of dollars, everything I'm going to show you after this is going to be about money. So if you look at our allocations, we're granted blessed to get money from the feds. So under the home transaction, you can see there over the last 4 or 5 years, we get on average a couple $1 million a year for housing. So currently, we probably have millions of dollars to lend. So if anyone's looking for a loan to be able to help supplement a affordable housing project, we have an application process where you're allowed to submit to our department and we can fund. So today, we don't have a lack of funding, we have funding. So if someone has a housing project in DeKalb County that you'd like to bring on board, give us a call. We have funding today to be able to help you with that. So in this case, we have funding. So if you have a project you're curious about, we can give you technical assistance to get you right in the right position to be able to apply to get affordable housing under the home project. The next facet on the chart there is CDBG. You want to say, how does CDBG link to affordable housing? Well, we have something called a HUD Section 108 loan capability, or we can actually do economic development, affordable housing, or capital improvements. To date, most of the HUD Section 108 transactions in the county have borrowed over $22 million from the feds for various projects. They've been primarily capital improvement projects, meaning senior centers, meaning rec centers and things like that. Well, we actually use that for county use, but we have the option to use HUD Section 108 funds to do affordable housing. I currently have a credit line of about $8 million to use to be able to do that. So here again is another source of funding that we have available for those who like to apply. Next transparency, please. The next area that we do a lot in terms of affordable housing is called neighborhood stabilization. So it's stabilizing communities as well as providing affordable housing. So in essence, this is a program we've had for years We spend enormous dollars, millions of dollars giving individuals in DeKalb County affordable housing. And these are the cases where it's home ownership. Next transparency. If you would. Here's an example of most recently, we've expended $4 million for projects. Prior to this, we did about $32 million of 168 properties. This is the listing of the most recent transactions since we've been CEO government's been here. Well, we actually spent $4 million. Those homes there are Pacific Street investors where we did three things. We acquired the properties, we rehabbed the properties, and we disposed of the properties and provided a $25,000 down payment for those individuals that got these homes. And I said, geez, that's significant. So we acquired homes, we rehabbed those homes, we disposed those, and we gave people down payments. So that's an example of affordable housing where someone gets a home for the first time and they walk away. And I'll tell you, that's 14 houses we did. The other thing I did is when I do that, we get money back. So by investing $4 million, I got revenue to the right there in that chart. It says that I got back $2.7 million. So then my investment is the difference between 4 million and 2.7 that I left in those properties. But I got 2.7 to propagate to the next set of houses that we're going to do. And we have a tons of money in a spin, millions of dollars to invest in homes in the county, individuals that choose to have a home. And that's a good program. It's better than the down payment assistance programs you've heard about. So when I give you $25,000 on a brand new house, when I say brand new, meaning that we've taken it from an older home that's vacant and use stainless steel appliances, new roof, new electrical plumbing, etc., and you get the keys. Most people are very excited about that. And I'll give you transparency next. We give you a couple pictures of houses that we've done in that area to help you. Okay, so in this case, we're 14 houses. Here's just a photograph of 4 of the 14 that in various places in DeKalb County. We have citizens today that live in those houses. They have keys and their families are very excited about that. So that's 14. We've done 168 houses. We spent $32 million previously. This is just a recent $4 million we spent on this process to help people with affordable housing in the county. So the message here is that we still have more funds and we still plan to do more NSD. And we plan to have people that are interested call us and we can get a home after we buy them into position to buy a home in the future. I mean, that's a really great opportunity for someone looking for affordable housing. And when I say affordable, these houses you can see were $300,000. We make them affordable to individuals so you don't pay PMI. When I give you $25,000, the more you can get, have you skip over private mortgage insurance to enable you to be able to live comfortably over a period of time. So that's an example of some of the things we do. Next slide. The next thing is a secret, okay? We can also do affordable housing where the developments we can acquire. We have them. This is an example of a project in Clarkston, where we had a developer. We went 50-50. We gave $5 million in, developer with $5 million, $10 million to buy this property. We rehabbed it. We have 88 affordable housing units for people in Clarkston. It's sort of like the UN when you go over there with the different cultures that come and live in this complex. So these are affordable units that we have for NSP. And that's another example with our NSP funds, we can actually bring on multifamily projects. So if someone has a project that we're not to engage in a partnership with to create affordable housing. So their market rate 50%, we're affordable 50%. So in this case, it's not 100%. Okay, and the units are floating, but that's a good example of Montreal Drive in Clarkston that we did that years ago. That property is appreciated greatly in value. But that's another example in a speed where we can stabilize the neighborhood. This property was burned and dilapidated when we bought it, but today it's a stellar project. It's a model project. It's HUD's coming down and giving us awards for this project. So if any developer that exists today has a property as an atrophy, we can help you with funding and turn the property around, and then offering affordable housing for individuals that will live there and have affordable rents. So that's another example of things that we've done, all that we can do. Anything we can do, I can show that we've done. So I invite you to help you by applying for these things. Next transparency, please. Now, very quickly, I talked about homeless individuals. These funds are geared up where you can look up there. That number's correct. It's about $20 million. We've got $20 million recently to be able to help individuals that are homeless. You might say, geez, it's a lot of money. Yeah, it is. But when you get a lot of money, it requires you a lot of work. So those programs that we have there, we've used some of the fund today to house individuals to get them housed in hotels and extended stay places so that they have a place to stay. We'll also have funds there to possibly build a shelter for individuals that are in DeKalb County and have them be housed in DeKalb as opposed to being transferred to the city of Atlanta. But those programs listed there are programs that we have gotten funding for. All that money is currently in the bank. We have it, and it transcends to be $20 million. In addition, we've gotten recent $1 million from the state of Georgia to also supplement our programs with emergency solution care. And like Brian is sitting on what row, he's aware of some of these transactions in New Life. But we're out to help homeless individuals to get housed for and make them affordable, have a place to stay as well. That's just an example of some of the things we do that are available today. So individuals that need help with homeless individuals to get them a place, give us a call. We have funding available to assist. Next slide, please. Here is something we talk about, but you never see. And these are the income limits for HUD. You might say people throw out AMIs and 80% and 50% and 30%. And you say that's jargon. What are you really talking about? Well, this chart gives you the insight in terms of how the feds generate income limits. It's put out by HUD every year. And the way you look at it is basically it's a person of 1 up to a person of 8. The sweet spot is a family of 4, which is in the middle. And you can see that it covers low income, which is 50%, and most housing units hover around 50%. 30% is low income, dealing with homeless individuals, and then 80% is the higher. Most affordable housing projects tend to hover around making things available for people who have income based on this chart between 50 to 60%. Not 80%, it's 50 to 60%. Most of the projects have funding for it. That gives you a table where you know as you qualify individuals in terms of income, how much money they can make as a family of 1, family of 2, family of 3, etc. And we have to use those, and all developers have to use those charts to make sure that you don't get any problem, because you get audited carefully about who you occupy your units. You can't have Donald Trump's son staying in an affordable housing project. That's not going to work. You get audited. So you really have to stay on top of ensuring that the income limits are adhered to. So we talk about affordability. That's the chart that you need to get your hands on. Make sure that if you look at affordability, that you have a sense for the family size. And when I say household family size, so you can't have an individual staying there, the boyfriend comes and his income is not considered. That's not true. It's all income. We audit that. You have to have all income in the household, okay, driven by these numbers. So I thought I'll share that with you just to be aware of it. Next chart. Okay, I've got 2 charts on LIHTC, one investment housing tax credit. So this is complex. Okay, I hope you can see it. Okay, but what I like to do is make sure that you get your hands on this. But the thing about low investment housing tax credit, which again is the most impactful tool in the United States, that's been used by everybody for years. It was revised in 1986, the Tax Reform Act of 1986. And most individuals to get things done understand the dynamics here. But the factors, I got a second chart, which might be a little bit clearer to explain this. Go to the next one. Okay, so let me explain who the players are, and I'll take you through this. It's complex, but I'm just going to give you the players that are involved in a housing tax credit proposal, because this again is a vehicle that gets you the way you need to be. The most important factor is that any housing project, which is at the left on the bottom in yellow, is funded with projects. The quick and dirty on low investment housing tax credits is that a developer will get tax credits from the state because Internal Revenue Service and HUD are involved. So the key players are IRS, Internal Revenue Service, and HUD, and they interface with the state Department of Community Affairs to allow developers to apply for tax credits. When they're awarded, they're transferred over to an investor, okay, for equity purposes. And that investor provides funding for the project, whether it be 9%, et cetera. I'll give an example of that later. But those are key players to be able to get the developer working with DCA to apply for tax credit on a competitive basis, it's not automatic. And then Internal Revenue Service will honor someone buying those tax credits to offset their gross incomes on their businesses. And those funds will come over to help you fund for construction purposes the project. So without getting into the weeds, I could do that, but I would just make you aware that this is important to understand if you're a developer in the room as to how this works. You get someone to work with you. And the QAP qualified allocation plan always is in the first quarter of the year. The developers getting the new rules for tax credits. And I encourage all of you to go to the QAP, send someone there to walk away with the new changes for tax credit for the year. A room is packed with individuals that have projects that they're going to submit. And that's very important if you're going to play this game to understand how this works. The next transparency. The next one is to give you an example of bonds, which are 4%, and also tax credits, which are 9%. So the most lucrative will be project is 9% tax credits, where you effectively, it's an example of a project. The net of this whole project, when you go to the flows, is that you end up getting 9% of your project costs, annual project costs, and that's multiplied times 10, which is 10 years. And that amount is the amount you get transferred into your project. So in order to do that, and also the 4% bonds yield you considerably less. This year, bonds are competitive. In prior years, bonds were not competitive. DGA has changed this process to say, not only is 9% competitive, but 4% is competitive as well. So be aware that things have changed. So you have a lot of competition in this area. But this is the vehicle to be able to get projects, funding for your projects. Next transparency. You also have an option to do what's called taxes and bond allocations. So Pete, his role, the housing authority can do bond inducements. So there's a cap based on the per capita in the state of Georgia. They're determined on a macro basis, about $1 billion that we have. And individuals can apply for bond inducements from various entities. This is just a copy of a couple of projects that have gotten bond inducements in the county. But those developers out there can also pursue getting bond inducements for your projects. Next transparency. Next one's going to be exciting because it gives you the rent structure. We talk about rents, and I hope you can see this, but here's the chart. I invite you to stare at it in terms of what are the rents in DeKalb County. And what you're going to find is that the rents vary in terms of geography. The further north you go, the more the rents. The further south you go, the less of the rents. But you can see there that the increasing prices of year to year have gone up considerably. And the high points in the area will tell you kind of where you are. But you can see all the orange bars are up. Nothing's flat, everything is up. And you can see that where the most expensive places to stay. Brookhaven, okay, Lindbergh, Emory, North Druid Hills, etc. Those are giving rent levels of 1,700 to almost 1,800 on average. And you can see conversely, if you look in areas that are in Lithonia, you can see that where we're at 794 before, in the middle it's about 1,200. So even they're going up.
And it's important to note too, Mr. Baker, that there's an enormous jump from 2015 to 2021. Yes, and absolutely. So we're seeing enormous increase, even above the GDP, gross domestic product. We don't, there's no way to explain what we're seeing. I do understand that material cost has gone up as a result of supply chain. But my biggest concern is once people are able to demand and receive, we're not going to see these rates go back down. I think this is where we are.
Yes.
So, Mr. Mitchell, I don't want to take away from you, but I just had to say that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. The next chart will give you a sense of some quick math that's done in terms of affordability. So this tells you that. Okay, so if you stare at this, it tells you basically that the housing cost market rate, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. It makes an assumption that if you're paying $966, slightly under $1,000 for 1 bedroom, or that man $1,100 for 2 bedrooms, and these numbers, keep in mind, I just showed you are higher than that. So these were my base numbers, but they've gone up. It says that the required incomes there, you can see that the required income to live in these individuals places are going to be a low of $38,000 for 1 bedroom, $44,000 And it makes the assumption, or 57,000 for 3 bedroom, makes the assumption that you pay 30% the income toward rent. It also tells you the wage structure in terms of what you got to make. The minimum wage in this example would be that in order to afford a 1 bedroom unit at the old prices was about $18.58 per hour, going up to 21 and 22. You can see that those numbers have gone up, which says by definition that you need to make a lot more. Now wages have not gone up, so you can see that there's a problem. And the only way you solve this problem is to spend more money towards your disposable income toward rent. The natural rule is 30%, but as these prices go up, the only way you can survive is allocate more money from your disposable income, which is not a good thing. So you have to spend more money of your disposable income, make sacrifices to be able to stay where you are today. But you can see that if the rate market goes up, wages stay stable, you can see that there's a major problem. Okay, but this is an example where I did the math for you, but you know what you have to do. That's why it's very important to have affordable housing for people so that they can get around and get back to 50 or 60% AMI to be able to get into these units. Because the current state we're in, it's a disaster with the increase of rates with a stable income. It's not good. So the equation has to close, and it's very challenging. And the next chart, we're going to skip to the next one because it's a repeat of the income link again. You can go. And what I'll do is I'll conclude with some very quick transparency I go through. Because as I said earlier, anything we talk about, I'll give you information on how to get something done. Let me give you an example. I don't go to the next one of how we've done this. I'm going to give you several projects that exist today that are in DeKalb County that came through a low investment housing tax credit, and also where we actually provided funding through home investment partnerships, where we became a partner with millions of dollars invested in these projects. So in order to bring up affordable housing, we worked with a developer, bring on the project. They got tax credits for the LIHTC process we talked about, and we gave them supplemental funding to a funding gap for the project. We lend for funding gaps, provide assistance to have people get where they need to be. So let's flip through these very quickly. So the first one is going to be the View. That's a housing grade project. Thanks, Pete, working on that. That's in Cedar Stone Mountain, and that's a very
It's a lovely facility.
Yeah.
and there are people there that love it. It's affordable housing. Give those seniors. You can see this example in DeKalb County. We have state-of-the-art facility. Thanks to people building it. Thanks to being a partner, and we went online. I've been checking that affordable housing units there. When I say units, I'm talking about apartment units there for people to live in, which is a good thing. Next project is going to be Campbell Road. That's Sterling and Campbell Road. Jolly Lights project. There's millions of dollars in that project, but that's a 172 unit facility. And Campbell Road, right behind the senior center that we built years ago, next to the library. And that's a valuable place for people to stay. And that again was a project where we used bonds into the project, and we put home funding into the project. As an example, bringing up affordable housing, 172 units. Next transparency. Here's a project that was done by my good friend and past Noel Khalil, and that was Columbia Residential, which is actually near Sam Street, downtown Decatur, in the city of Decatur. So in the city of Decatur, we have affordable housing, which is part of the Transit Point Development Project, which is right off the College Avenue. And this is about 92 units, state-of-the-art, nice facility where people can stay downtown Decatur. You can't get a better place than that. And that's something we had funds into that project. There's a major loan to this developer. They got tax credits, and we pulled that and transacted on. So you see the connection between lending funds, the supplement, and getting tax credits that they got involved. Next project. Here's another one, believe it or not, in the city of Decatur, because it's great to be downtown. There's so many conveniences, but people can actually be here, have access to all facilities. But this is called Stride Senior Residence. We provide a loan on this project as well, and they did tax credits. It's a very viable building, very nice. Go there. And sometimes all these projects, I'm going to tell you, sometimes have vacancies. So we have people get on the wait list, pursue them, try to find out whether your loved ones can go to a project. Got a unit there, they're nice, they're really nice, but they have a waiting list. You can't just walk in and apply. Get on the waiting list. And there's transition there, unfortunately, but you can also get access to affordable housing locally right in the city of Decatur. Next project. So the next one is Storms, and that's in the city of Clarkston. And that's a project which is a housing authority project. Thanks, Pete, again. You can see we work very closely with Pete, Christine. But this project also is a project where we made investments in it to bring up affordable housing in the city of Clarkston, which is a nice place to be. We've been there recently. In fact, this is one of the most recent projects that are open. But it's a significant, multi-story building, state-of-the-art facilities. People love it. Well done, and all. So it's a really nice example of affordable housing. Next project. You're probably not aware of this one. This is up in Chamblee. We go north, we go south. In Chamblee, this is the senior residence at Mercy Park in Chamblee, not too far from the water station. Where we brought that on, and there's a medical facility on Mercy right next to this, which is great and excellent in terms of where it's located in the city of Chamblee. Okay. And one more, and I'll be done. Campbell Forest. This is a project we did with Noah Khalil years ago, which is near the Raleigh Rucker Funeral Home on Campbell Road. It's tucked back, it's gated community, very well done, still stable. We did this years ago. We did LIHTC and a home loan for this project. And it's well done, well maintained, and people love it there. They love it. This has been another example on Campbell Road where we've been able to bring in effectively affordable housing.
And even for that one, Ray of Hope, nonprofit City of Hope was the Chodo that developed, just another example of a church being a part of a
That's
housing
right.
development.
That is true. I was in, I've been around. Yeah. I was there, yeah. Yeah, we did that. It was fun. These projects are fun. So I'm going to conclude by saying that we're serious about helping this affordable housing crisis. We can demonstrate that we've done a lot over the years. Could we do more? Yes, we can do more. We're blessed to have funding. So I invite those that have projects to approach us for funding. So we can repeat what we've done in the past, but we've made a dent in this problem we're trying to bring on to our precious citizens, affordable housing. So again, I'm excited to be associated with these projects. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today. And Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you. And I can say that, many folk that are sitting here aren't familiar with these projects. No one has actually engaged you before to say these are the type of things and opportunities that we have, and we are willing to walk alongside you to make them happen. The last individual, and one of the things we didn't get into, because I want, people to understand Mr. Mitchell, and I guess, as projects move down the road, but I wish we had shared some numbers. Because even though, you are helping us, there is a great deal of revenue that you will generate as a result of owning these facilities. Tremendous amount. So, for some churches may be looking for long-term financial incentives. The more you have, the more you can do. Well, this is a way to do even more if you take the time and make this investment into these communities. And last but not least, we have Mr. Pete Walker. He will be speaking on the topic of mixed income development, as well as giving an overview on how the Housing Authority of DeKalb partners with developers, financial institutions, and government entities to build affordable housing projects in DeKalb. In addition, the steps that faith-based nonprofits can take to partner with the Housing Authority on affordable housing development to help us move the needle and provide much needed income. So at this time, we're going to let you take it over. Pete, we appreciate you for being here, and we know so a huge welcome now. You all are in such great need.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I really thank Andrew, Dorian, and Alan for presenting. They actually presented a great deal of information that I would have presented, but we've covered it, and that's a good thing because I know everybody is pretty much ready to go now. We've been here for a while. I hope it's been educational. I really thank Commissioner Cochran-Johnson. What a wonderful leader she is. Providing more committed to helping them than she is. You did mention a really important point a few minutes ago, Commissioner, Cochran-Johnson. We talked about the revenue that we receive from these transactions, because that's what has been very important for us. As we partner and develop these numerous developments that we use the revenue to have resident service programs and to break the cycle of poverty. That's what we're trying to do, is break the cycle of poverty. Give people tools to get out of it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna shorten my overview a little bit so that we can get to some of the questions that you might have and just some of the mechanics of it. I think that Dorian and Alan's presentation showed a lot about how bond issues and low-income housing tax credits and all that work. And I'll be happy because that is my area of expertise. I've been doing that since 1989. The Tax Reform Act of 1986 created low-income housing tax credits. Took us about 3 years to figure it out. And then we finally started doing it in the 90s. And I started with Urban Residential Finance Authority in Atlanta and on to Atlanta Development Authority. It's now become Invest Atlanta. And moved on to the Housing Authority because this is where I'm from. I graduated from Clarksville High School about 100 years ago. So just a quick overview of the Housing Authority of DeKalb. I hope you can see it. Our mission is to provide sustainable and affordable housing as a platform to enhance lives. And we came up with that mission because ultimately we do want to enhance lives. We want to have the housing, and we've talked about what housing is a platform to do. And we believe that, and also we added the word sustainable because in so many cases, particularly in the public housing arena, with housing authorities, the housing is not sustainable. It's very dependent upon government, significant amounts of government money coming in. So we have transitioned fully to what we call the sustainable real estate model, which means that the revenues from the development cover the cost of the development plus, and that's what we do. And I am very interested in talking with churches after this discussion because I believe that that's the best avenue for us to continue to grow this, because churches tend to own properties. They tend to be very invested, and their congregations are invested. So that is really a great avenue. We had some success with Antioch quite some time ago, and other people have had success with other developers, but we're an active developer as well. Allison, can you make it a little bit larger so that maybe they can see some of the services that we provide? Yeah, that's right there. So yeah, just that HADC services. So a housing authority, a lot of people have quite honestly very negative connotations when it comes to housing authorities. But this housing authority is very active, and I believe shouldn't have anything negative about it. So we really work hard to try to provide affordable housing throughout the county. Commissioner Cochran-Johnson mentioned something that was very true. The last time she asked us about our wait list, we did have 45,000 on the wait list. But it was 60. And now it's down to 25,000. But it's not, I wish that was good news. I wish it was. Just because we have to purge it. Because if you don't remain interested, we have to purge it. So you'll see that we do great work. Alan talked about some of the partnerships that we've had. We do great work, but we're still only producing about 1,000, 1,500 units a year. And that's substantial from a development standpoint. That is really substantial, especially when you're a housing authority, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to the need. So that's why we have to, what we're committed to is trying to leverage as much as we can. We're going to leverage as much as we can the resources that we have, including low-income housing tax credits. And I want to really, in a nutshell, talk about what low-income housing tax credits mean to a development. If you're doing a $20 million apartment development and you're able to get 9% tax credits, that means that you can get equity from investors of probably about 80% of that development, 70 to 80% of that development. In other words, $20 million, investors will put in 17 or 18 million dollars of that, which means you now only owe $2 or $3 million. And that's how you can charge lower rents, because you have to pay back to the banks or your lenders $2 or $3 million. So that means you can rent at a lower rate than you would normally rent, because you're only paying back $3 million of a $20 million investment. So that's how you're able to provide low end, that's how you're able to provide lower rents. So, and the investors get their return directly from the federal government. The example Alan showed earlier, where he had $23 million in tax credits, they'll pay $20 million for the tax credits. So that's how they get a return. They pay $20 million for the tax credits, and then they get $23 million in taxes that are in tax reduction. So that's how all that works, kind of in a larger scale on that shelf. So I wanted to make sure that you guys understood what that meant. So we provide affordable housing. We develop real estate. We have several entities. We're affiliated. We actually call ourselves Affiliated Resources Group, because the Housing Authority consists of the Housing Authority of DeKalb County, the Housing Development Corporation, Resident Services Corporation, and PTS Consulting Group. So we do a lot of different things. We're not just providing, and the Housing Authority itself, the main duty of the Housing Authority is to administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program. We have 4,809 vouchers that are allocated to us. We administer that. But we also have about 2,000, not 1,000 ports that come in that have vouchers. In other words, they come from Des Moines, Iowa, or Michigan, or wherever, and they come here and port into DeKalb County. So we administer about 5,900 vouchers that we administer. And those vouchers, as you may recall, a lot of people call them Section 8 vouchers, we call them Housing Choice vouchers. And what those vouchers do is they pay a portion of people's rent. They qualify, they pay a portion of it, and that's what the wait is for. So that in a nutshell gives you an idea of what we do from a housing authority standpoint. We also provide veterans housing. One of the things we do in providing veterans housing, we have a BASH program, which is called Veterans Assistance Housing. And that is specifically for veterans, and we're trying to get the, it's supposed to be homeless, the veterans are supposed to be homeless for a year. And we're trying to get the VA to lighten that definition so that it can be veterans who are just having some housing issues. And they are considering that, because it does say something about if you're in danger of being homeless. So we're saying, why don't you use that instead of being homeless for a year? Because all of us would agree, if I suddenly became homeless for like a year, I'd have a whole lot more problem with housing. And you can't just put a person in housing that, okay, now be successful.
Right.
You need a lot of programs. So why don't we head that off by providing, if you're having an issue for a couple of months. So we're working with them to do that. And the sad part is right now we have about 288 of those 714 vouchers are not used because we can't get people to qualify. They haven't been homeless on that. It's crazy. So we're working on that. And as you can see, that's something that really bothers me. We also list, I had Allison pull up our fact sheet, just so you can kind of just see in a nutshell, an overview of the things that we are involved in. Our current housing portfolio, Alan showed you a number of the pictures, but we have 11 projects that we both own and manage. On the left side there, Ashford Park side and all that. Then we have one that we own and third party managed, and then we have them partially owned. Those are the units that we have, and I'm not going to go into great detail about that because again, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask me questions. But we are very active out here. We're in some of the projects that we have right now that we're working on as we speak. Andrew left. Is Andrew still here? Okay. Well, Andrew, I'll make sure that I'm calling people out just like you call Andrew. I need to get approval on those land disturbance permits right now for Kensington. we're working on a project in partnership with, and Alan, you too, I need that million too. For you. Two projects, you know which one I'm talking about too. So Alan, look at you, yes, everybody's. So, yeah. We're working on one on assembly, the General Motors site, we're working on one Pinnacle Group on assembly, and that's gonna be a great development there. That's where they already broke ground for the film studio, but we're doing senior housing there. And that's the one that Alan just promised that he would put the $1.2 million in. I think he said, we don't even have to pay it back. Is that what you said? So yeah, we're working on a number of different projects, and if you know anything about the Housing Authority of DeKalb, we used to have 2 public housing sites. As I indicated earlier, we transitioned fully to what we call the sustainable real estate model. The public housing site that we transitioned first was up at the intersection of Ashford, Dunwoody, and Johnson Ferry. And it was 498 units of public housing on 55 acres. And we turned that into a mixed income development. And it currently has 3 different developments, senior housing totaling 389 units. We put 90 market rate units on that site. Homes, put 94 sale market rate homes on that site, 200 market rate apartments, and 50,000 square feet of retail. Now, the important part of our mixed income concept and mixed use concept is that usually we take away from the tax base. In other words, when we buy a property, we don't have to pay taxes on that property. That's what helps us make it affordable. But when we do a mixed income or mixed use development, we sell houses to people, or we work with a developer to have market rate houses. Maybe those houses on that same site, if you go up to Johnson Ferry right now, or Toby Grant right now, or other site right now, you'll see houses being developed where people have to pay taxes. You'll see part of it being an apartment that's not available. That increases tax base. We've increased tax base on those 2 properties by about $160 million. And that's significant. Because we're not just taking away, we're adding to the tax base. But what it also does, something that I saw was very important, and with all the time that I worked in Atlanta, it creates a mixed income community. I remember a friend of mine told me he used to live in what people would refer to, right next to what people would refer to as the projects, somewhere in Atlanta. And he said he used to get up and go to work every day, and he said these little kids were looking at him every day. And then one day, one of the little kids got up and said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "To work." And so a lot of people don't see that. You learn by example. I learned by example. I remember all the exposure that I got, just seeing other people do certain things that I never even dreamed of. So one of the things that we really try to focus on is increasing exposure, because so many people, as I said earlier, I graduated from Clarkston High School. A lot of the people that I went to school with lived in Scottsdale and Toby Grant public housing. The only difference between me and them was exposure. So I learned that people need to be exposed, and that's one of the things that we work really hard. And again, I'm having kind of abbreviated. We're doing the Toby Grant site, the Scottsdale site. We talked about that. That's 200 units, also on 55 acres. It was public housing, and now it has been transitioned to 380 units, 2 senior developments and 1 family development there, and 94 market rate single family homes. We partnered with NAR there. NAR is doing a great job. Those houses just popped up. And that's what you can do. We didn't have the resources to do it ourselves, or we would have done it ourselves. But just the infrastructure alone cost $80 million. Just putting in the water and sewer cost $80 million. So we didn't have resources to do that. But we're very proud of those types of developments. There'll be mixed income and mixed use, as I said before. And just getting into the one that we're working on right now that Alan promised to help on. The Marta Kensington site. We're very excited about that. You can see all the activity at Kensington, and it's not over. There are 244 units under construction right now. Just across the street from Kensington, not across from Memorial, but across the street from Kensington, that we're partnering with, I'm sorry? No, that is adjacent to Memorial.
Okay.
So the one that hasn't broken ground that I needed Andrew to approve the land disturbance permit. That's the one on the MARTA site. That's that parking lot right at the corner of Memorial and Kensington. That corner, you'll see dirt moving around in probably November. Because we're developing multifamily there. We want to also work with MARTA in developing, we have great partnerships so far with them, and we're going to continue to work with them and develop several other sites. They don't really like us to talk about that too much, because people are looking for it immediately. And I gotta add this, everything we do takes like 5 years. So 1989 seems like it was yesterday for me, because everything I do takes 5 years. Except cut the grass. That's why I love cutting the grass. I can do that in one day. But everything else, 3 to 5 years from now. And so this project, we started working on all this stuff years and years ago, we started working on it. So, and I wanted to make sure that, and I think Alan and Dorian did a really good job of providing tax credit information regarding affordability, what is considered affordable, what's 60% of area median income, all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to just really make sure that I set aside some time to answer whatever questions you might have. And also really, one of the things that we're really very interested in trying to do, that'll probably be happening in the next 3 to 5 years. We don't have any 55 plus subdivisions. And that's what we're doing. That's our next really big push over the next 2 to 3 years. So if any churches want to partner with us on trying to do that, we'll be happy to talk to you about that. And also 4% and 9% tax credits too. Okay, so it's okay for me to answer questions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Are there any questions at this point? Yes, go right ahead, Marie.
Wait.
Okay.
I have a property that's already zoned, committed, ready to do a mixed use, affordable housing, transit oriented, can be non-congregated, tier 2. I'm ready. I see the money right here and I see you ready. I need to do it.
That's right. So
I need somebody to fill out the application for free development.
So my number is 404-270-2633.
And let me say, Mr. Walker and Mr. Mitchell, since you're the last two remain, and thank you all for your patience. What I'm thinking is the next seminar that we do, it would probably be a good idea to host a day where we literally allow individuals to register on the hour and come in and receive technical assistance or have questions answered. Because we want to keep this moving. I don't want, you to get bogged down. Now, you will receive all of these slides and you are free to go ahead and make necessary calls to reach out to us if you have questions. The more information you provide, the more I know these men can help. Because depending on the land that you have, that may dictate what you're able to construct in terms of the density. But I am going to work with you all to do a technical workshop and we'll register you on the hour. You guys just come in and we will talk with you about your projects, okay? Any questions for us? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all for doing this, first of all. And in particular, I have a property, it's my own, I'm unemployed, but you said you would like to cut grass. I do need help with that.
I knew I was gonna be in trouble. Hardly anybody likes cutting grass.
No.
The only reason I like it is that I finish, that's all.
And we may be able in District 7 to empower you. We may just be able to bless you with the lawnmowers. Now, I will say that, we have a gentleman that had heart surgery His wife has passed away and he reached out because he was very concerned because his grass was high and we took care of his lawn all summer. Jamie, working with, other entities, I'm not sure who goes forward, but between all of us, we cut his grass. And see, that's what we ought to be about. So, you able, I think we just need to get you the lawnmower. So we'll work on that for you. And yes, sir, I see your hand next.
We to 5 year, is that because of COVID that is taking so long with that 3 to 5 years?
No, it's just it's a normal process. So when they listed, some of the things that you find the site, then you have to, by the time we have to actually do that, and I wanted, another young that was here said that DeKalb County's cost were like 24%. That hasn't been my experience. Not 24%. It might be 5 to 10%. But to answer your question, 3 to 5 years, for example, Kensington, the site that we're looking at right now. You have to find a site, which we found it at Kensington. Then you have to start to do a site plan, which takes months to do a site plan. And then it takes months to do architectural drawings. Then you have to make sure it's zoned properly. And if it's not zoned properly, you have to come back and forth to the county commission to make sure they approve the zone like before you go. And then you have to actually get pricing on your structure from the contractors. And then you have to get financing. So all that alone takes 2 years. And then the next thing you have to do once you start construction, that takes, used to be about 14 months and now it's 18 to 24 months that it takes for construction. So that's how everything takes 3 to 5 years.
So is there anything that you guys could suggest where we can help facilitate that units where it could come faster?
I'm not sure. I think what we could do, one of the things that I would suggest, at least, I guess this will be some sort of favoritism for the housing authority, because there would be no doubt that we have the interest of the county at hand. We could have an expedited process for that projects affiliated with the housing authority. That would be something that would be great. We could have an expedited process for.
And let me say, depending on how organized you are, I've seen people move quicker. I think everyone wants to paint a realistic timeline, but when you have a good project manager and the right people around you who understand the process, they get in there. As I said, if they apply for a SLUP, special land use permit, do upzoning of land, they walk in prepared, they're able to explain and express to the community the benefit, show clearly the renderings, you can make it through the process much quicker. Now, if you run into opposition from community, that can be one of the worst things, because we will defer you, because we don't want to create an adverse situation between community and investors and people that come in. But realistically, I would say 2 years is about normal, but you can move quicker. So get your ducks in a row and you talk to us, and let's, because we need housing now. And that's one of the things that's so disturbing about what we say. Even if we begin to address it now, we're 2 years off from solutions, and people need help now. Yeah, first, in my polka dot, go right ahead.
If there is a community that is already existing in multifamily, and we acquired that to renovate it for the program, what does that timeline look like? Because there's
That's a bad timeline. The issue there is financing and cost. What has happened is dramatically the last couple of years, the prices have increased dramatically. You have a lot of people who haven't put one nickel into their apartment, and they're asking double what they paid for because they can get it. What has happened overall, I can explain some of the situation that has happened with, there's a tremendous, I used to be an investment banker. One of the things I saw, there's a tremendous influx of capital, cash from investors, because interest rates were so low. And then you have billionaires making a lot of money, and they're not gonna put it in a bank account somewhere, they're gonna put it in real estate. They're just putting mountains of money into real estate. So those of us developers who actually know what we're doing, we're getting overflowed by people who don't know it, but they have a lot of money.
Right.
So what they're doing is just buying stuff at exorbitant prices. And they're getting a small return, but it's better than a bank account.
Someone online did ask about, the vacant structures. Is there any opportunity there?
It depends on who owns it, because, if it's owned by the county, then there could be opportunity. But if it's owned by these, some of these, opportunists, then it's difficult, because people are asking exorbitant prices right now. For example, we bid on it's actually a good property. We bid on a property for about 180,000 a unit, which we thought was really high 3 years ago. Now it's $275,000 a unit. So, and now it costs us, it used to, 4 years ago, it cost us about $100,000 a unit to build apartments. Now it's costing $235,000 to build apartments. And, not only is there a supply chain issue, see what happened was when we shut down for as long as we did, there wasn't enough product put into the market. So then when all this, we had this really bad situation of a tremendous amount of money coming into the coming into our economy and not being enough supply. So that's like economics 101. When you have tremendous demand and not enough supply, prices skyrocket. And that's what's happening.
And let me say from a community perspective that, you know, there's been a few properties in particular that I won't use the word wage war on, but they sat in a condition of disrepair too long. So when we see properties that aren't being kept up at the expense of community, if you will let us know, I will send out code compliance, because you are going to upkeep your property in DeKalb. And we have a lot of investors who have sat on properties for a long time. And you don't get the luxury of creating blight in plain sight in DeKalb and being okay because you're waiting for your payday. Well, it's gonna be uncomfortable for you because you're gonna upkeep that property. You're gonna meet code. And if not, then this is a great time to pass it along. So sometimes we have to work together to apply pressure, because many of those investors, they will not put what's necessary to bring their properties into a state of good repair.
And then one of the things that we don't try to publicize it, to be honest with you, is trying to acquire properties like what you're talking about. But the minute they see there's any government related thing, the price is really skyrocketing. They think we're idiots. So, you know, we have to kind of quietly try to buy stuff. But right now, it is a tough time because these guys can sit on their properties and just make a tremendous amount of money. But that is something we're focused on right now. To answer your question. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Phil Cuffey. I'm the co-chair of the Beacon Hill Black and Line with Lights. And I want to, well, first of all, thank you for this wonderful event and presentation. And also, just to let you all know, you're in Beacon Hill, the first community of Black people settled here in the 1870s. And over time, through harmful policies, the land has been basically transformed into what you see in this building. So it's important that we are accountable to ourselves and control land and develop property that has been mentioned as one of the most important themes of this event. And I wanted to ask a question and make another one more comment. My question is, the county, something that we've been fighting for in the city of Decatur, that's a more progressive inclusionary zoning policy. So the city of Decatur finally has a mandatory inclusionary zoning policy, which means that when development goes up, at least 10% of the units must be deemed affordable. We wanted more, and this is 80% AMI. We wanted 20% and 60% AMI. Understand that counties is better at 20%
Well, that's what the tax law,
Okay, well, which one prevails in terms of the city?
that you have a choice. So, no, the city will prevail. See, what you're talking about is kind of two different things, because one of the things that, but just the financing source being taxes and bonds and tax credits, that's what makes you make the choice between 20%, 50% at 20% or 40% at 60%. That's what Dorian was talking about. So that financing source did it. But in Decatur, you're talking about individual investors that are getting any money from any kind of government. Their financing source is a bank. So the only way that you can have any say with them is with inclusionary zoning. Where you can say that's the only way you can do it. You don't have say unless you have inclusionary zoning, which says it has to be, but it prevails. That prevails because they're not getting any kind of funding from anywhere. It's their own money.
Thank you so much, Mr. Walker. Let's give him a round of applause. And we're acknowledging people. I know now the room has dwindled, but I see everyone staying as long as they could because what was said was important.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you all for coming, but also I want to say to everyone, you can't do what I do without a team. And I have truly been sent the best team in 1300 Commerce Drive, and I'll tell anyone that. So I want to thank Dr. Davis, who's in the back of the room, for being here with me. I want to thank Allison Slocum, who has done a wonderful job of maneuvering through the slides. And we also have in incubation, because I believe in raising them up, our newest member, Ms. Amaris Sawyer, who's in the back, recent Agnes Scott graduate, and former student council president there. And we are blessed to have her, and JP isn't with me, but everyone knows Jonathan, JP Phillips as well. So thank you all so much for being present. I'll be here a little bit longer, but I know that our technology team needs to go. And Mr. Walker, thank you all so much for your time. If you're not getting our newsletter, make sure you register because we will be announcing the third technical seminar as soon as I wrap my mind around the best way to help so that we're able to continue moving forward. And Ms. Brinkley, I saw your hand, so go ahead and ask your question.
I just want to say thank you, Commissioner Carmen, for doing an excellent job. Thank you. We at the County Association of Realtors would love to partner with you and get a seat to see how we can come together with some collaborative solutions to try to see how we can help fix this elephant. And it takes one bite at a time, but the DeKalb Association of Realtors want to get over the California.
Absolutely, consider that done. And I saw Ed Patton here earlier, who actually represents us, and Miss Stacy Thibodeau, and the list just goes on and on. Thank you all for coming out because I know that you understand the importance of what we're doing. As a member of the profession, you're removing realtors from the process now. And we see, private equity firms coming on board. And we can't afford to do that because that's when we lose. We do not have many of our seniors that are selling their properties at what is considered market rate because people are getting to them. So thanks again. You all have a great day and God bless.